Welcome to Coily Crowns. I'm Shante.
And I'm Lori, and welcome to our Queendom. Happy Juneteenth!
So this is our special Juneteenth episode. Uh, Juneteenth is on June 19th, which will be this upcoming Saturday. And it is a celebration that I don't know if a lot of people really knew about until recently. So we're going to educate you about Juneteenth with some fun facts and just have some conversation about the holiday itself and what we know about it, what we grew up knowing about it, and go from there. So, Lori, you have some fun facts and history to read for us?
Yeah, so I can preface this by saying I don't remember really learning about this for sure. I think it's been in the last maybe 10, 15 years that I've kind of understood more about this. I think a lot of people from Texas knows because it kind of originated there, but and was celebrated there. But I'll read kind of some information that I found kind of talking about how it became a a holiday.
Okay.
So Juneteenth is kind of made up of June and the 19th, which is the day that it is celebrated. And it's also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Liberation Day, or Emancipation Day. And it's a holiday celebrating the emancipation of those who've been enslaved in the United States. And it was originated in Galveston, Texas. So it's celebrated annually on June 19th. And it's trying to get to like a federal level in order to be a federal holiday. I can't remember what year, but in Texas, it was made a state holiday for that state. So it really came about when in 1865, there was an announcement order from the Union Army that they were supposed to be proclaiming the freedom of slavery in Texas. And it came 2 years after Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation had officially outlawed it in every
Two
state, not
years.
just Texas. And it
Two
took
years
that
later.
2 years later, 2 years, okay, later, that they finally said, okay, somebody needs to go down to Texas, tell them to stop it because nobody was stopping it, even though the proclamation came out. And of course, back then, it wasn't a tweet, email, a news story. They had to send someone physically to go down there and spread the news in Texas, no less, the biggest state ever. So, that's forever. So that's kind of a little bit of the background of kind of how the day came to be, even though you know slavery was supposed to be abolished way 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 before that date.
Yeah. So, like you, I don't remember growing up knowing anything about Juneteenth. I think it was after I moved to the DC area. DC celebrates Emancipation Day. And I think that's where I started hearing Juneteenth and learning more about it. And I was like, oh, really? I never heard of this holiday before. And then, like you said, it's really only a holiday, at least until recently in Texas. Texas was really probably the only state that officially celebrated. I'm sure other places maybe had celebrations community wise. You know how like Black community would get together and do things. Yeah, I don't remember hearing anything about it when I was growing up. So I'm so happy to know more about it and to hear about it. And last year, I think with the whole Black Lives movement, it became a more popular, and a lot of different organizations started actually making it a holiday and time and giving people time off. So my university actually it started last year. It is now a annual paid holiday. So I will have Friday, June 18th off in celebration of June 19th. Your job has did your no
First of all, we don't even get off for Martin Luther King Day,
oh
so I did participate because, 2020 was like a huge deal, not just for the pandemic, but also about um, all things Black. 2020 is now all things Asian. But there was like this big push, at least in my organization, that we talked about police brutality, how people feel being a person of color within the organization. And that was one of the things that I, along with some of my coworkers, were advocating for, is not just a day off, but really a recognition of what this day means to not just Black people, but other people of color and for America in general. That maybe this is an opportunity for you to learn more information about American history and what happened, right? So still working on it. I will be working on June 18th next Friday.
But you
But
can wear your shirt. Show everybody. Show our shirts. We have Juneteenth shirts that we got online, and so you can wear your shirt to work and let them know you're celebrating, even though you have to be there physically.
yeah, but June 19th is a Saturday this year, so could go out, celebrate like it's the 4th of July, like how we do everything else. Have a little cookout, go to the beach, just, read up on your history, take the opportunity to learn some more information, share information with other people, because that's the only way that I would have figured out what this was.
Yes.
Um, because I think I remember when I first heard it, I was like, well, why doesn't it match up with when Lincoln, gave the proclamation, and I had to figure out the whole backstory about this. I was like, wow, you always got to go through something. So,
Yeah. And I don't think you read the part where one of the reasons allegedly that it took so long is that or are you going to read that? Is that coming up?
yeah, we're going to go over some facts
Okay.
that people don't always know about Juneteenth, but you can preface it. I can bring it up again. It's fine.
Okay. Now I was going to say one reason that it took so long for people to find out is that once the word got there, they were still in the middle of crop season, and a lot of the slave owners didn't want their slaves, the enslaved, to know that they were free, because they wanted them to continue to work and plant so that they would be ready for the next season. So that was one reason it took a lot of time, a whole lot of time, for people to realize that they were free. And then, as Lori mentioned, Texas is a big state, so it probably took more time to make it around the whole state to let people know that they were officially free and not enslaved anymore.
Mm-mm-mm. So let's talk about some facts. So, of course, we kind of mentioned some of these, but the first thing that I have here is enslaved people had already been emancipated. They just didn't know it. So there was about 250,000 enslaved people in Texas that were already free, but no one was aware of it, and no one was in a rush to inform them. So I'm sure a lot of the slave owners probably eventually knew about this, but like Ashante said, they were worried about making money. Like, my crops are going to spoil. I need you to reap them and, keep making this money. I don't care if you're free. Right. So there's that. Then there was many theories of why Emancipation Proclamation wasn't enforced in Texas. Of course, just people didn't want to give up their property at that time that they paid for, and was brutalizing and raping and pillaging. And also that they think that they sent several messengers to the state of Texas to do this, but that the messengers were murdered in the process, or people didn't want the message to continue to spread. So they try to intercept the message from getting out, especially to Black people. Also, that the announcement urged these enslaved people who are now free to stay with their former owners as hired labor. So, as you can imagine, you've been doing everything for free. You've been like I'm sure most of these people were not the nicest people, right? We've seen movies about this. So they were probably like, I'm out of here. I'm free. You can't keep me here. You can't do anything to me if I leave. So people were trying to leave, and they were trying to keep them on as hired labor because, like Ashante said, that was the season. We need this stuff to be done, or we're not going to make any money. And I'm not going to put my white hands on these crops. What are you talking about? So they were trying to convince them to stay, and they were just like, I guess maybe some people stayed, and there was other people that left, which was also known as the scatter. So people were trying to hightail it out of whatever plantation they were on to then go find people that maybe have migrated to the north, maybe people who ran away, maybe they knew family in different plantations. So people were just scattering all over to try to find their loved ones. Um, and then not all enslaved people were freed instantly. They continued to enslave people and use them for free labor until they were good and ready to do it. They've even had to, I guess, hang some of the slave masters in order to enforce the law as well. Because
they killed the white man to enforce the law.
Yeah, they were probably, I don't want to bring it to today's term, but sometimes they do hang some white people out to dry to prove a point, but they're not going to kill them all, right? So they're just going to be like, oh, we never liked him anyway, so just get it right. So they said also that freedom created other problems. So they were, people who wanted to leave, the slave masters wouldn't allow them to leave. They would still murder them. People were upset. They were still beaten and lynched. So, even though, they had every right to go, people weren't happy with it. And then there were limited options for celebrating, because where were they going to celebrate? They tried to celebrate the announcement 1 year later, and they had nowhere to do it. So some slaves, former enslaved people, pooled together $800 and purchased 8 acres of land, and they deemed it Emancipation Park, and they used it in order to gather, because that was their only safe spot. And that was the only public park and swimming pool in the Houston area until 1950. And, Juneteenth celebrations waned for several decades. It was just difficult to celebrate, or people, they had different ways to celebrate things. So maybe that's probably why the Juneteenth story maybe began to die out a bit, because there was other holidays, or just, people slowly start forgetting about that history. But then Texas was the first state to declare Juneteenth as a state holiday in 1980. And it was the very first state to do so. So I guess that kind of revigorated the Juneteenth holiday, but it is still not a federal holiday. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, the efforts that's being taken on to try to push that forward. Juneteenth also has a flag. I'll put that up here. It's blue and red and white, so it's the same colors of the United States flag, but it's more blocks and like I don't know what you would call that, a star?
A star.
Within a star?
Double star.
Yeah. So it utilizes the same colors, because they are United States citizens, and they play the star in the middle pays homage to Texas, with a bursting new star on the horizon of the red and blue fields represents new freedom and a new people. So those are a couple interesting facts about Juneteenth, about the holiday, about the history of how it came to be. So I'm just excited to kind of just know more about, the history of our people in this country.
Yes, it's always good to know our history, meaning all Americans. It's not just a Black or African American holiday. It really should be something to be celebrated by all Americans. That slavery was officially on paper had ended on
Mhm.
and could be celebrated. All slaves were freed on Juneteenth. Um, this kind of makes me think about what's been in the news lately with this whole critical race theory. Have you been following that? How all these states, so a lot of mostly Republican states are passing laws to prevent changes in the education system on what they think
Oh.
are critical race. So basically, like there's this push that we're trying to teach that racism and it doesn't it exists, and then like basically like almost all white people are racist and blah blah blah, and that's not the case. Like I read an article in the Washington Post that as usual, somebody grabbed onto a word and took off with it. But really, what the theory itself is trying to do is just educate people, um, mainly children, and putting it into the education system, not just like in elementary school, but even in university systems about racism that is within our system. So systematic racism that does exist. And so just educating people about that, but they've taken it to a whole nother level. Anyhow, so thank you, Lori, for those facts. You also mentioned that there's a series on Netflix called High on the Hog. It's been getting a lot of traction lately. I have started watching it, but I didn't get to finish it before this we take this. But you mentioned that one of the episodes they talk about Juneteenth. Can you tell us a little bit about what that episode was about?
Yeah, so High on the Hog is basically it's like a food show, food blocking show to show how American cuisine has been influenced by African culture,
Mm-hmm.
based on who was doing the cooking back in the day and what we've been giving to to American culture as a whole. Like if you think about it, I think they had an episode of macaroni and cheese, and everybody loves macaroni and cheese, and how it came to be, and like the love and the attention and everything that it goes into just a food that has become an American staple. I mean, people, not just American, but people enjoy it, but it is an American staple and kind of where that history came from. So that's basically what the show overall is about. But the last episode, because it's only a 4-part series, so the last episode kind of focuses on Juneteenth. They go to several places in Texas, and they kind of talk about the history of that and how they celebrate it, and there's just the types of food that was kind of brought out from Texas, because it's not just barbecue or whatever. So they
Okay.
talk about, their cooking techniques and things that they do in order to celebrate that holiday, and just give a little bit more historical data, not just food wise, but overall in the state of Texas. So I thought it was very interesting. There's probably other shows or documentaries dedicated to that, but I thought that was interesting to see something in modern times talking about how they keep that history going.
Okay. Yeah, highly recommend watching High on the Hog. It's very interesting to see how so much of our food and culture comes from Africa, comes from the motherland, and how it is still has made impact around the world and the diaspora of like of certain things. Like first thing that come to my mind was trying to get there is the difference between the yam and the sweet potato.
I never understood that. It's ridiculous.
And it was so interesting to hear them talk about that. And so much of our food that we eat here and around that the diaspora again comes from the motherland, might be called a different name, but it's like the same food. And another interesting part was the gumbo. Like certain countries may or cultures create a dish, but at the end it's basically gumbo, what we know as gumbo, but in all these different parts. So that is interesting. And because it's talking about food, and usually Juneteenth, right? We're talking about is food and barbecue and picnics and all of that. It just kind of meshes well together.
Yeah. It was really interesting. I don't even recognize the host. I don't know. I haven't seen him before.
Never heard of him.
But I mean, he got into some good spaces. He talked to some, interesting people, seen some, showed some interesting places that I was just like, wow. But I don't know. Maybe once Ashante finishes it, we may review that one too, because there was some other things that they mentioned that I'll be interested to talk about as well. So we'll see.
Okay. I'll be finishing it soon, hopefully. Okay. Anything else you want to chat about with Juneteenth?
No, just go
Okay.
out and celebrate.
Yes, go out and celebrate, spread the word, let it become more known um about the holiday itself, so people really understand what it's about and educate people. So, and a part of the education process could be making it a national holiday, a federal holiday that can be celebrated by all. So we want to recognize Representative Sheila Jackson Lee as our Queen of the Week. She is a representative from Texas, and she has been making effort to pass a law to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. So Representative Sheila Jackson Lee said, I think Juneteenth tells a wonderful story. It's a story of freedom. It happened 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, but it still set a pathway of freedom. Who are we as a nation if we're frightened about freedom and liberation and joy?
Mm-hmm.
So so that's her quote on why we should make Juneteenth a federal holiday. And the last time Congress has added to the official holiday list was in 1983 for Martin Luther King Day.
Wow.
So we have not had a federal holiday added to the calendar since 1983.
There needs to be two. There needs to be a voting day as a federal holiday, and they need to go ahead and do that.
I agree. They should. And in this article, they also said that I don't know if it's heard, but there are people who are trying to make Inauguration Day a federal holiday. And I feel like I'd rather you choose voting day than Inauguration Day.
Why would you need Inauguration Day? They became president on voting day. Let's just go ahead and do it on voting day so people can actually vote.
Yes, I agree. So maybe I think there have been bills in the past to try to make it a holiday, just like there's a bill for this, just hasn't passed yet. Yeah. So hopefully those days pass. So, Rep Sheila Jackson Lee, congratulations for being our Queen of the Day and your efforts to make Juneteenth a national holiday.
Yes.
So, what are you guys doing to celebrate Juneteenth? Let us know in the comments section. Are you having a barbecue? Send us an invite.
Right.
We'll make it there next year. But whatever you do to celebrate, be sure. Oh, also, if you don't know, there's now like a lot of decorations and things like that are available. So like normally you can find things for 4th of July, right? Like American flag themed stuff. There's Juneteenth things. So go out, support, search. Lori said she saw some things online for JC Penney's website. Mm-hmm. I saw something on Walmart's website. So there's stuff out there. If you're having something, you can maybe prepare for next year. Go buy the plates, the cups, and that kind of stuff to celebrate. Okay, so have a safe Juneteenth, and we hope to see you next week. And before we leave, we want to remind you to do what?
Protect your throne. Bye. Power to the people.